Yeah, so as I was about to say, obviously one of the big factors of Waterford is the terroir. I don't think it's any secret that I'm not the biggest fan of the terminology or the concept of it. But what intrigues me, and it's kind of like we said earlier, to me, it doesn't matter whether you believe in terroir. It doesn't matter whether it's a primary thing or not. It's all about the finished product. And, you know, one thing I will say is that whether I believe, and same as other people, whether we believe in terroir shouldn't affect the fact of we're still excited about your whiskey. And that's kind of where I want to go into now, because to me, the terroir, for me personally, is pointless. All I want from you is a fantastic whiskey. And I know I'm going to get that because I don't think there are bad whiskies, but, you know, and I kind of know that if I turn around to you and say, how are you going to prove to me, you know, you're going to say to me, come over and have a look. But, you know, for those of us out here who kind of don't believe in it, what is the sort of quick answer from you to say, you know, this is what it's about?
So it's going back to kind of what influences how the barley grows. So each field is different. The conditions they grow in are different. And when we see different soil series, I suppose it's coming back to doing the terroir project. And we have major soil series, and we're seeing flavor notes that those soil series are giving us. Yeah. And that's the thing. It's coming back to, like, if you don't believe it or if you do believe it, it's coming back to the science now. It's coming back to what Dustin is doing with the spirits. So even just, you know, we have an Elton soil series, we have a Clonroach, and we have Kilrush, I think, are the main soil series, and they're giving us different flavors, even from that. So, you know, the Elton soil series gives you a more earthy, barnyardy, slightly even fainty note, whereas the Clonroach is more fruity and more dried fruits and a fresher note. You know, and you see it then in from year to year to year that there is differences because of how that year was in terms of rain, sun, and other environmental impacts like that. One of the other things as well is, I suppose, you know, how a farmer farms the land has an impact on it.
Yeah.
You know, if he puts a cover crop in the year before, and that cover crop keeps nitrogen into the ground, and he puts less nitrogen onto it, that has an impact to us. So that's all part of it. But I suppose there's no probably short, easy answer.
No.
To terroir, and I'm relatively new to terroir, the concept as well. And yeah, if you're not tasting it, yeah, you might doubt it. But as I think you said, Søren, once the whiskey is good, that's anything.
I mean, one of my sort of bugbears about the terroir wording, I mean, I'm more of a provenance traceability. You know, 100% behind that. I can get behind that. The thing with terroir for me is there are too many factors that can influence what you get off the still. And my argument to you is that, yes, you can get a barley and you can say it's from a certain type of soil. I mean, we know, you know, there are kind of limited amount of soil types. You break that down to the areas and things like that. But what comes out of it is that while you're making that spirit, you can influence the taste in that spirit anyway. So how can you tell us that what you've got is down to the barley and not because of very small modifications in the way you've processed that fermentation and process of making new make spirit?
Yeah, I suppose we're trying to keep the process as repeatable as possible. And after that, it's down to the facilitator here in the fact that Diageo left behind every kind of temperature probe, pressure transmitter, everything. So we have, I don't know, thousands of data points that we have collected. and we can show you then. So it's for me, it's the 3 T's. It's terroir, but then it's traceability and transparency. We can show you exactly what's after happening.
Yeah.
And when you get your bottle of whiskey, there'll be a terroir code on the back of it. And when you put in the terroir code, it'll bring you to a page where you can see what's after happening. Now, at the moment, there's a good bit of work going into it, because obviously some people are going to need to see or would want to see different things. So there's a lot of work on that, but it's literally every bit of information is there, and we can show you.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's one thing that I really do commend you guys on, because I have seen the amount of effort you're putting into it. And you know, that blows my mind, the fact of how deep you're going, and absolutely fantastic. You know, I've got no qualms with that. I see the amount of new make spirits, you know, the bottlings behind you, the rooms that you've got, the data that you're putting together. But my argument to that is, does it really matter? You know, at the end of the day, we want a whiskey from you. How many people are really bothered about what field it's come from, what soil type it's come from? And, you know...
Well, I suppose the best way for me to answer that is, if it doesn't matter to anyone else, it matters to us.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's...
And that's it. So at the end of the day, once the whiskey is good and people like the whiskey, you know, someone asked me before, what do you want from this whiskey? And my short and simple answer is, I want someone to open a bottle of whiskey, to smell it, smile, taste it, and go, ah.
Yeah. No, fully agree with that.
Wherever, you know, so there'll be someone drinking a bottle of Waterford whiskey, they won't know or care where it came from.
Yeah.
But like, this is what we're doing to put into a bottle of Waterford whiskey to Ballykilcavan or Banno. So it matters to us, and we believe it. And, you know, once the whiskey is good at the end of the day, as I said, sorry, that's it.
Yeah. And ultimately, like, these things are going to matter different amounts to different people. I know, Soren, you and I have talked about this at length before, and I often talk about how, you know, sort of having more of that information, that traceability, really improves my, you know, whiskey drinking experience. And it can go the other way. You know, you can get people who say they love whiskey, but probably don't care where it comes from. You know, they'll just drink a blend, or, you know, you could put anything in front of them, and as long as it's brown, you know, they'll be fine. So, yeah, I guess it's like, you know, some people are going to really care that it comes from this distillery. Someone like me is going to care even more that I can look on a GPS map and see Google Maps where the...
And I suppose the other thing is, this whiskey is not going to be for everyone. So if people don't want it, like, you know, that's fine. We're not saying it's going to be for everyone. It's probably, you know, it's not a cheap bottle of whiskey. You know, we have very big inputs cost-wise into it. So it's not going to be for everyone. We're not saying it's going to be for everyone. But I think Mark's concept, be it being pompous or whatever at the start, was he wants this to be a whiskey for people who are intrigued by the whole proposition of where does your primary ingredient come from.
Yeah.
So I think when we're looking at people and they want to know where their carrots are coming from, where their meat is coming from, and those are the people who will probably have an interest. And then there'll be people who go, I don't care where it's coming from. This is just a lovely bottle of whiskey.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm kind of in that process where, you know, but one of the arguments I would put to you is that I know distilleries will get their barley and the same strains and everything. You know, some may get it one amount from, say, Scotland, and some might come from England. But their distillery character is always the same. So doesn't that kind of say it's not about the barley and it's more about the process, because they can make barleys from different areas taste the same?
I suppose their style of spirit is the same, rather than the actual taste of the spirit being the same.
Yeah, that's fair enough, yeah. I mean, you know, because one thing that kind of gets me is, and it's obviously this wasn't you personally, this was somebody else, but I think what upset a lot of people to start with, and things have changed over the last 18 months or so, is, you know, when you get quotes, and again, I emphasize this wasn't from yourself or from officially from the distillery, that where people, well, it was from the distillery, but where people are saying that all the other people in the industry don't care about how they make whiskey. And I think that was quite upsetting and very controversial, because there is not a distillery in the world that I would imagine does not care about how they make whiskey, just because they don't go down the terroir side of it, the provenance, you know, and the traceability, but, you know, they still care about how they make whiskey. And, you know, every distillery will tell you that their whiskey is the best. You know, I mean, you know, that's why we make whiskey, because we believe in what we're making.
Yeah, and I don't agree with that comment, like that people don't care what they make, because like I worked for 15 years as, you know, 10 of those years I was an operator.
Yeah.
Every day I was doing my job, I wanted to do the best job I was doing.
Exactly, yeah.
And I think that's the same for everyone. But it's come back to, I've had, one of the diplomatic answers I had to give farmers. So we've had farmers come in, and we have a growers gathering, and you could have 40 farmers in here. And you'll always get the farmers saying, "Is my spirit or whiskey better than the neighbours?" And my diplomatic answer to him now is, "Do you like coffee?" Because I don't like coffee.
Yeah.
Right. You may like coffee, so we have different tastes. So
yeah.
You know what some people like and don't like, you know, and that's not to say that it's better or worse. It's just that it's different.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think anyone who's making whiskey or who's involved in the industry is passionate about their distillery.
Mm.
And the fact that we know, you know, it's coming from David Welch chemist or Ed Harper, or we've had a cup of tea with him or whatever, that's our story. That's our part of our journey. But I think when people get their grain, wherever they get it, they treat it with respect. I'd imagine every distillery does that. So
yeah.
For me, you know, I don't know who said that, but like I think sometimes people get very passionate about the distillery here, and sometimes when arguments or things are happening, they might say things in the heat of the moment. But for me, you know, it's if people are involved in distillery, they want to make the best whiskey possible.
Yeah,
and you know, and that's it. And ours is different.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that is very important. And like you say, you know, whether you believe in terroir or not, again, you know, I want to emphasise the fact of it shouldn't affect how you look at the whiskey that you're producing.
No, and that's it. Like, you know, we like what we're doing here. We're passionate about it, like everyone else in distilling industry. And what I would say is, I'm not saying what we're doing is right for someone else. And I wouldn't say what anyone else is doing is wrong. This is what we're doing, and we'll talk about it. And we'll, you know, as I said, a distillery will have a style of spirit, but we have different flavors from each farm and that style of spirit, I suppose.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the important thing is, you know, is whether we believe in it or not, is the fact that you believe in it, you know, because if you don't believe in it and you're making it, then it's not going to work, is it?
Yeah, and like, I suppose one of the, maybe, I don't know how good or bad analogy is, you know, Thomas was a disciple, but unless he put his hands in the wounds, he didn't believe.
Mm. Yeah,
you know what I mean? But he was there, and when he put his hands in the wounds, he believed. Like, so, unfortunately, everyone can't get a taste of new make spirit from different farms, from the distillery. So, you know, all we can do is advocate that we believe it makes a difference. We're doing the Terroir project, which is, you know, the distillery putting a lot of money where its mouth is to prove it. So there's a piece of paper to say, you know, whether you believe it or not, it's there. So yeah, all we can do is say, listen, we're enjoying what we're doing. We believe passionately in what we're doing. See, that's all we can do. People may not, as I said, people may not care about it. Other people will want to know, you know, what PG, what was the first OG on the washback one for David Welch Chemists in 2017. You know, we tell them. Someone else won't even care.
Yeah.
And that's the whiskey industry. I think that's the one thing I've seen and learned probably in my time, is that everyone involved in the whiskey industry has different reasons for being involved in it.
Yeah.
You know, some people just like to taste it. Some people want, to taste something different. Other people want to get behind the story of the distillery or the people who are making it. And as I said, some people don't care. So I think there's something there for everyone. If you're like Ed there was talking, he wants to know what's going on, and Zoran, you just want to know, does it taste nice?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's not so much that I just want to know what it tastes like. I mean, one of the things that I argue about, and I know a lot of people have kind of asked me to ask the question up front as well, is, if you've got a whiskey there that you have to have scientific proof that it tastes different, what's the point?
Yeah, well, and it's not that we have to have scientific proof.
No, but what I mean is by that is, if 99% of people can't tell that it's different, what difference does it make that it is different?
Well, I think people will be able to tell that it's different, but I suppose what will happen is they say, oh, the cask influenced it, or it was the way it was distilled, or it was the way it was in fermentation and stuff. So it's literally just to say, these are new make spirits that were done scientifically, and they taste different, and we can trace it back to the soil and the influences of the soil.
Yeah.
So, that's
and it's in that. I've got a question. It's in that theme, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. Terrific. So it's sort of fair to say, Ned, that the project has thrown up all sorts of interesting surprises and new flavours and that kind of thing. The logical conclusion of continuing the project and gathering lots of data is that terroir becomes controllable and predictable. Is that a recognised milestone in the journey? That you understand terroir and then it becomes something that you can control.
Well, I can tell you, Alistair, it doesn't become predictable.
No.
Not at all. Because
anything becomes predictable if you gather enough data.
No.
Anything.
No.
Yes.
Speaking
as an engineer, yes.
Okay. Well, do you know what the weather is going to do next year?
We don't have enough data.
Yeah, but I don't know how much rainfall is going to be next year. If there's going to be, if the farmer is going to sow, if the farmer plans to sow on the 12th of February, and his tractor breaks down, and he can't sow it until the 15th of February, he could make his cross. I know what you're saying. If Everton is right, but we don't know what the future is going to hold in terms of weather, and the weather is the big thing.
Right. Okay.
You know what I mean?
So, yeah. It sounded like you were saying earlier on that something like soil, was becoming something that you understood and became predictable. But I understand.
We're getting a better understanding of the soil. But what goes into the plant or barley growing is, as I said earlier, topography, how fields undulates. It's all the bits and pieces. So it's not just the soil. It's everything that it impacts that. It's how deep a farmer plows his field.
Yeah.
It's a whole lot.
So as somebody that's got a process to run, and anybody who's got a process to run desires predictability, how does that make you feel that your process will never be predictable?
So Neil, who's the head brewer, has the toughest job in the distillery.
Yeah.
Because when we used to get grain in, say in Diageo, you'd get it in at the same spec for probably 4 or 5 months. So you set the mill and off you went. That was it. Farm comes in, Neil has to make tweaks based on the specification that comes in. So gelatinization temperatures and grain sizes and bits and pieces. But that's the hardest job in the whole distillery in terms of production is just doing that. Because at the end of the day, Mark doesn't want to talk about efficiencies and bits and pieces, but from a professional do. Like we need to do that. Like we need to get the best quality, obviously, but you're trying to get the most alcohol out as well, like, you know. So yeah, each week that the farm comes in is a challenge.
I mean, one thing you've got to remember as well is that as the farming side, that every year you will never ever get a barley that is the same from the same soil or anything, because every single year you're on a rotation of between 3 and 5 years generally. There aren't many farmers that will put the barley into the same field year after year. You can, but there won't be many that will. You plough it over, you work the land, and it's always going to be in a different soil. And like Ned has said, the weather changes every year, you know, but that's kind of, I mean, that does play into your argument a little bit, Ned, because, you know, you will say that, well, from year on year on year on year, our spirit is going to change.
Yeah.
And we'll never have the same spirit again. And I kind of get that. But again, what I argue is that there are still too many permutations in the process of making whiskey that can affect that barley. You know, your fermentation times, you know, like you've said, I mean, when you make each field, you cannot guarantee that it's all been done identically. And you've already said that you do little tweaks anyway. So, you know, but how do we know that those small tweaks haven't been the difference in the taste of the new make rather than the barley itself?
I suppose I can't answer that here now. That's what the Terroir project is probably an important part of that. But like, I suppose what we can see is, you know, like styles of spirits coming through from each, like we've done some farms throughout the whole, you know, since the start, and we're probably seeing some lineage from that, from farms and stuff. And also, I suppose when we're looking at the tweaks that we're making, the tweaks in the brew house are to get the best out of the grain. Yeah. More so than trying to make tweaks to change things in terms of flavors and stuff. So at the brewing stage, at the mash house and that, it's to get the best out of the grain. So each farm that will come in will have maybe different grain sizes. Will have different gelatinization temperatures and stuff. So when we're using the hydromill and the mash filter, we need to look at that and use that. So I suppose at the end of the day, I'm not a scientist. I can't tell you, you know, that makes no difference. That makes a difference. All I can do is say that, you know, I'm fortunate I can taste the new make spirits and they're different.
Yeah, Ned, on that, mate, you and this actually will probably help Ali on his previous question, and sort of gathering data and finding things that are predictable. I know you mentioned to me before that you're finding that, I think you're getting sort of 3 different styles of new make, and you're seeing patterns in those styles coming up based on soil type. Do you just want to run through
so as I mentioned before, like, so Elton and Clanroach are two soil series that we're seeing distinct flavors from. Actually, if I bring my 1 second now, see, can I do this for you? 2 seconds. You may not see this, and you may see it, you may not. But this is, I don't know, can you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the board that's behind me. So you can see Elton, Clanroach and Kilrush, the main soil series. Then you can see the subsoil series in red, and you can see then in the blue the different flavors that we're getting from those as well. So in Elton we're getting earthy, barnyard, fainty, oily, clove. But you know, so you can see. Can you see there? You can see Clanroach then going up to Kilrush. You're getting fresh fruit, floral, sweetie, dried. And Clanroach, then you get a cereal, a grain, a little bit of solvent off Kill, which is a subsoil. So you could have an Elton Kill soil that will give you a combination of that. So that's coming from the Terroir project as well.
So within that, Ned, then, so each farm is obviously giving you around 75 to 100 tons, did you say? 75 tons?
We get roughly around 75 tons of malt.
Yeah, so we're probably looking at maybe 1 to 2, maybe 3 fields per farm.
Yeah, 1 or 2 fields, yeah.
Yeah, so within those fields, if you've got a different soil type,
yeah,
and if we're talking, say 2 fields, which could be 10 miles apart, depending on the size of the farms and things like that. So if you've got, say, one field where it's running 2 different soil types, and your second field is also running 2 different soil types, all that grain is then mixed together. So how are you determining what has given you the flavour on the soils when you could, in theory, have 4 different soil types within that batch of barley?
Well, we have each field. Well, I suppose the fields are not that big and they mightn't be that far apart, so the soil types wouldn't be that different. But each farm, we have a soil type for each farm.
Yeah.
We know what we say. So if I show you, this is Brian Kelly. I don't know, can you see that?
Yeah, yeah.
So that's Brian Kelly's soil type.
Yeah.
Okay. And I just see how many fields Brian had. I think Brian might have only had 1 field. One sec now. Let's see, you can get the, yeah, so Brian just had the 1 field, right?
Yeah.
All right, so if we get another passport here, John Cousins, I think he had a couple of fields. Sorry now for a second. So John had 3 fields.
Yeah.
Okay? But the 3 fields are all one soil series. You get the right page for you. Sorry now. And the reason I have these out, because I was doing some work earlier on just to, sorry now. Get the right page. The 3 fields, can you see the purple there?
Yeah, yeah.
So the 3 fields are right beside each other.
Yeah.
Okay, so typically when we're getting, the 100 odd tons from a farmer of barley, the fields are together more likely. But if there's an out farm or something, we have the soil series from that as well.
So are you trying to not stipulate, but trying to keep each farm giving you the product from a certain soil type each time, so you're not trying to mix your soil types within that farm?
We have no control whatsoever on anything like that. So it's up to the farmer and it's up to Minch Malt.
Yeah. Because I mean, I would argue with some of the fields that I farm, we have within one field, if it's say a 25, 30 acre field, that we could have anything up to 3 different soil types running through that one field. And, the argument would be that just because that one field has 3 soil types, the next one might be pretty standard. But you've then got 3 different soil types where all that barley has been mixed together, but that gives you an overall flavour rather than an individual soil type flavour.
Yeah, what I'd say is it gives you the terroir from the farm.
But then what the argument would that be is we've got to work that field very separately, because we will put fungicides on, we will put things like that on, and again, that's not about necessarily the farming techniques. It's about what we've got to do, and again, depending on the climate and things like that for that particular time. So everything's different. But again, I would still argue as to whether what we have done in that sense has a massive effect on what you get off the still.
It affects the barley. And, I suppose it affects the ground, and I suppose it's coming back to, the fact that we think that the flavours then are coming from the barley. And
are you taking note of where the seed barley comes from? So where that was grown, you know, because obviously some farms will use sort of a first generation seed, some will use a second generation, some will use a third generation, which again, it may be called Concerto, but that third generation is a very weaker version of Concerto. So therefore you are automatically going to get a different flavour profile from that third generation to what you will a second or a first. So
Minch malt look after whatever the seeds.
Yeah.
So I think this year we've only two varieties. I don't know the answer to that one, Søren. I'm not going to give a bullshit answer to it. So
no. I don't expect you to, and you know, I'm not trying to catch you out. The questions I'm asking personally are to kind of make me understand more where you're coming from. Because like I say, you know, coming from a farming side, you know, I will say that, you know, I'm not an arable farmer myself. We have arable, I do work on the arable side. I run the livestock and a percentage of the arable side. But, you know, I look at it and yes, I know the fact of what we grow, it all gets mashed together. I still have a hard time believing that from field to field to field, there is any difference in flavour without the process dominating it.
Yeah, I suppose. New potatoes?
Yeah, we don't grow potatoes.
No, but you're familiar with new potatoes.
Oh yeah, I love potatoes. Yeah.
And where do you get your new potatoes?
From the shop.
Yeah, would you get them from a particular farm though?
No, I mean, you know, that is one thing. Produce like that, I will go to, say, Asda, Sainsbury's, and I will buy my potatoes from there.
Well, where I'm living is there's a good few potato growers, and we're getting close to the new potato season, and I have to say I'm really looking forward to it. But I know, you know, from tasting potatoes from different farms which are neighbours, they taste different.
Yeah. I mean, I will go on the sense of we grow carrots, and we grow probably anywhere between 80 and 200 acres of carrots a year, which is obviously over a good amount of fields. And I would argue the taste only changes depending on how I cook them, personally.
What do you mean? How you cut them?
Cook them.
Oh, cook them.
Cook them. Again, you know, if I was to eat the carrot straight from the soil, I would argue that I would struggle to taste any taste difference, unless if somebody said this is from 500 miles away, then I could possibly, you know. But again, I would argue the fact that there is enough taste difference in there to make any difference.
Well, I suppose that's where we might differ in that.
Yeah.
We say with new potatoes, I'd say which I would particularly like. There's certain farms where I get them because I just prefer the flavour of them.
Yeah.
Even they're the same variety. They're probably sown same day or a couple of days apart, harvested within a couple of days of each other, and they're nicer.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of don't want to go, you know, we're kind of going slightly off topic in potatoes.
Agree to disagree, lads.
I do have a question to kind of bring us back on topic. I've got a couple of things I want to ask about, specifically about Waterford and to Ned.
Yeah.
So one of the questions I've been thinking is, why specifically barley? Does barley tend to show terroir better than other grains like wheat or oat or corns or rye? Or was barley simply like the widest available so you could draw the biggest amount of source data?
As far as I know now, that barley has the most complex flavour of the varieties of grains. So that's why, you know, single malt is that's why we're using it.
Okay, well that's interesting.
Sorry for a second, guys. Not to be a party pooper, but about 5 more minutes is all I have now.
Yeah, no, that's not a problem. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, we go back to there. Sorry. Yeah.
Just one more question from me. I was wondering what style of distillation would then best express the flavor of the barley? Would it be a single malt or a single pot still? Because with a single pot still, you're getting the unmalted barley. Would that interfere at all, or what would your thoughts be?
Yeah, so obviously we're just doing single malt, and we're using the pot stills obviously, but ours is just going to be a single malt. So I suppose the reason unmalted grains were probably used before is costs. It's obviously more expensive to get malted barley. But yeah, so for us, it's just going to be single malt.
Okay.
Anybody else got a question for Ned?
I've got a very quick question, Ned. How long before I get my bottle of whiskey?
It's going to be in the shops during the week, hopefully, Ed.
I mean the pilgrimage.
Oh, the pilgrimage. So yeah, we had problems. Obviously, the court, we couldn't get the court stuff done because they shut down.
Yeah.
We have a court date on the 16th, which is Tuesday, and hopefully we'll get that through. We'll get all the licensing sorted out, and we will have it. So we're planning on we're going to do a drive-through, and if you can't come to that, we're just going to send it out to you. So 3 weeks, 4 weeks, maybe.
Cool.
First bottle from Waterford.
Okay. Go on, Claire.
Well, I just want to go back to the experiment. On the website, there's a basic sentence at the end saying overall environmental differences in whiskey flavour are indeed present. I'd say that's pretty obvious. When are we due to have the final paper? Because it did state that it was due all sort of autumn 2019.
Yeah, so we extended it for a year to do an extra year, and we were due to have the findings in May in Edinburgh at the institution Brewing and Distilling, I think, was there. So we were due to have it there. So it's going to be towards the end of the year. It's going to be done. So it's a peer review paper. So Dustin needs to do it in front of his peers and stuff. So as far as I know, I'm not sure the exact dates, but towards the end of the year, whenever.
Okay, cool. It's just interesting to see the experiment complete rather than filter out.
We went for an extra year of studying, and it said it was due to be out in May. So we just whenever they can get everyone in the room to go through it.
Yeah. It'll be great to read all of that once it's peer reviewed as well.
I would love to read it.
What I'm going to do now is
explain a lot of it to me anyway.
What I'll do now, Ned, is because obviously I'm conscious you need to go. Thank you very much for coming on. Again, I probably don't think, me personally, I'm convinced still, but I am extremely excited about what you're producing. I want to get that across. Under no circumstances does my thoughts deflect away from what I hope you're going to make, and I'm looking forward to tasting that. And I will also put out, and the fact of, I'm conscious. Apparently, you have my name and address to send me lots of samples. Just want to put that out on video. That no, you don't. But if you'd like it, but no, seriously. On a serious note, I am extremely excited about what you're about to produce. Like I say, and I think everybody who has any understanding about whiskey will say the same, that it doesn't matter whether we believe what you're doing. It's all about the final product. So thank you very much for coming on.
Very exciting.
Thank you for explaining into a lot of depth, and it's probably not been that comfortable, but it hasn't been as bad as it could have been. But thanks for coming on, and good luck with everything you're doing.
Yeah, no, listen, thanks very much, Søren. Delighted to be on. I wouldn't say it was uncomfortable. We're at the end of the day, I'm talking about what I'm doing every day. If it's going to be uncomfortable, we shouldn't be doing it. There's obviously bits and pieces where I'm not as knowledgeable as someone who's an expert in some of the bits and pieces, and that's it. Like, the other thing is, like, we can only tell you what we're doing, and I'm not going to tell you lies or make stuff up if I don't understand.
No, wouldn't expect you to neither, Ned, because at the end of the day, it's all about what you produce and not about.
And just to extend an invitation to anyone who wants to come over, if you're in Ireland or whenever, like, you know, we'd be delighted to see you at the distillery as well.
That's great.
Do we have time for one small quick question, please?
No.
No, not with you.